Hello, everyone. Today is Friday, August 4th, 2023. My name is Ebony Lev, and I'm joined by the awesome Kyle Forges. I am located in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm going to let Kyle introduce himself and tell us where he is physically located.
Hi, afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle Forges. I'm currently situated in Davie, Florida.
And Kyle, by the way, this interview is taking place over Zoom. We are audio recording only today. Kyle, can you tell me what your childhood was like?
Childhood. So I am the second born son of four boys of Haitian immigrant parents. Childhood, I was in everything. I was in karate, I was in music, I learned how to play the violin, I learned how to play the piano. But the most integral piece of my childhood was surviving childhood cancer. When I was 6 years old, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. And a major part of my first grade year in school, I was homeschooled and I was kept at home to recover from cancer. So instead of going to elementary school like my peers, I would go to the hospital and interact with the nurses and the doctors and get treatment for the childhood cancer rather than go to school every single day. So my childhood developed from that childhood cancer where I had a different outlook on life, where I wasn't around kids my own age, but rather I was around doctors and nurses and other sick individuals in the hospital on a day-to-day basis.
And how long were you kind of going through that process of going to the doctors and stuff?
So it was probably around 6 to 9 months. I started in the summer of my kindergarten going into first grade year. I was in summer camp and then I had a terrible outbreak of health issues. So from that summer into the following January, that was basically the period where I went through chemotherapy and I went through radiation as well.
And so, were you the first person in your family to have such a diagnosis?
I was the first person in my family to have Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer.
And how did your family kind of deal with that, especially your parents?
My parents became very overprotective of me. I became very attached to my mother. She basically took me to all of my doctor's appointments, made sure that I stayed healthy and stayed safe. My mother is a nurse by trade. So she really ensured that I was navigating and navigated through the hospital environment efficiently, effectively, and correctly.
And so, would you say that your mom kind of advocated for you through the process?
Yes, she actually absolutely did advocate for me through the process.
Okay. And so, you said that you were a son to Haitian immigrants. And so, you're first generation American?
I'm first generation American.
And so, did your parents go to school here or did they were they educated in Haiti?
Both of my parents have college degrees from the United States. My dad has an architecture degree, and he currently works as a building inspector for the city of Plantation in Broward County, Florida. And my mother has a doctorate of nursing degree.
Okay. And so, would you say that your parents kind of instilled in you that you should pursue higher education?
Yes, my parents, in addition to all of my other relatives, my grandmother on my mother's side was a school counselor and became a teacher, and my grandmother on my father's side was a preschool VPK teacher as well. So education has always been something important in my life. One of my aunts, Fabiola, she instilled education in me from a very early age. She was a school counselor in my elementary school, and she picked me up every single morning, me, my older brother, and one of my cousins, and drove us 30 minutes to school, 45 minutes, some days even an hour in traffic to school every day to one of the best schools that the county had to offer.
And what school was that?
The school was called David Fairchild Elementary.
Okay, and so you went there for elementary school. Can you kind of tell me about your middle and high school experiences?
Yeah, so after going to David Fairchild Elementary, I went to a middle school for a photography magnet. So I specialized in photography for my sixth, seventh, and eighth grade school years, and I met the most creative, intellectually vibrant student body that I ever encountered before. The school's name was South Miami Middle Community School. There was a drama magnet, a theater program, art program, broadcasting. So there were people. We had a school news. It was almost like the show Victorious from Nickelodeon, but with middle schoolers. It was an amazing experience.
And then high school, did you go to another creative magnet or how was that?
Yeah, so I actually went to two different high schools. My first high school was called Law Enforcement Officers Memorial High School. I learned very tough lessons there. The school was attached to the Miami-Dade Police Academy, and I was in the legal studies magnet. I went there because I wanted to be a lawyer, so I enrolled in their legal studies program. But what I didn't realize was that I would have to learn how to be a cop as well. So I had to wear these boots, a belt, a badge, an ID, wear a pin that said legal studies, and I had to learn how to march. I had to learn the phonetic alphabet. I had to learn military commands, and all of that helped me become more disciplined for what became necessary to get me through law school and get me through life as a lawyer. So I learned discipline as the primary focus of my ninth and 10th grade school years before I transferred to School for Advanced Studies, which was my second high school.
And when did you know that you wanted to be a lawyer?
I knew I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I was always the vocal child. I would always talk and argue with the adults. I remember a period where George Bush was running for president again, and my uncles were asking me, "Why would you vote for George Bush if he's a terrible president?" And I said, "Why would we change the president if we already have the same guy? Why not just keep the same guy in office because we know what to expect from him?" So conversations like that dotted my childhood, where even though I had the cancer, I was still intellectually vibrant and I was still able to have conversations with the adults about high level things. So I've always known and I've always been told by my family that I was going to be a lawyer, and they called me avocat, which is a Haitian Creole word for lawyer. And my parents kind of joke around with it, calling me Zaboka, which is avocado. So they kind of mess around with me, calling me Zaboka, Avoca, kind of a play on words, um, basically joking around with me, but also recognizing that I have the lawyer spirit within me.
Okay, and did you ever in your childhood before you get to college, did you ever meet an attorney?
Yes, there was. I actually met several attorneys in high school with the legal studies program. I was exposed to attorneys. I was taught by attorneys, actually. I had a teacher in ninth grade, Miss Farrow. She was a lawyer who studied at Columbia University, and she taught me world history. And I remember distinctly going into her class, ninth grade year, the hardest school year of my life, transitioning from middle school to high school, from the artsy school to the disciplinary law enforcement school. She told me the first day of class that by the end of this class, you're going to be an atheist. And I was very, very attacked. I felt so attacked by that. And I questioned why a teacher in a public school system would say that I would become an atheist after taking a world history course. But her teaching style showed me all of the issues of the Catholic Church and of Christianity and of Buddhism and of Islam. And I learned about the world religions on a deep intellectual level through Miss Farrow. And I saw why she said what she said. And I went through a deep dive into my spirituality in ninth grade, where I searched for meaning in life through books and resources to figure out why I was even placed on this earth and why I was even given the chance to survive in this world after having cancer. I went on a very, very deep spiritual journey that continues to this day to discover why I continued to breathe even though I was given the disease of cancer as a kid.
And so I'm assuming that you were raised Catholic.
I was raised Catholic, but funny enough, I went to a Greek Orthodox church. So growing up in elementary and middle school, I would go to Roman Catholic church with my aunt Fabiola. But then when it came to high school, late middle school, early high school, and throughout high school, I served as an altar server in a Greek Orthodox Catholic church. So it was a completely different viewpoint of Catholicism.
Okay, and so we're going to transition just a little bit. What was your process like applying for college?
So my second high school that I went to, it's called School for Advanced Studies. It is ranked one of the best high schools in the United States. It is a very specially tiered school, and it's catered towards bringing students into the best universities in the nation. So when I went to School for Advanced Studies, I knew I wanted to go to Columbia University. I always wanted to go to Columbia University. So I took all the AP courses. I was in dual enrollment programs where I got my associate's degree. I graduated from high school with a college degree, and I applied to Columbia University, but something about Stanford University really called out to me. So I applied to Stanford University, got into Stanford University, and I attended Stanford University after graduating from high school.
And so you said that you always wanted to go to Columbia University. Was it because of that ninth grade world history teacher?
I don't know what it was. I think it was the history of the school, learning that it used to be called King's College, and the history of how it was one of the first universities in the nation, and the significance, the cultural significance of the school is what drew me to it. But something about the West and going to explore the West, manifest destiny, with Stanford University, once that term hit my mind, once I heard Stanford, I knew that I wanted to be a Stanford student. So I applied to Stanford early action, and I got into Stanford University early action. That was the year that they had a 4.7% acceptance rate. So I was part of the 4.7.
And how was your experience at Stanford?
It was the most glorious, most intriguing, most severely uh, wild ride that I ever had. I was only at Stanford for 4 weeks, but within the 4 weeks at Stanford, I did a lot. I joined student government. I was on Frosh Council. I joined their mock trial team. I had a job in the law school. I made lifelong friends, but I only spent 4 weeks at Stanford. I left Stanford due to some mental health issues that I don't really want to get into. But I did what I did. I set a name for myself, and I created those relationships that last and continue to last. And then I spent my 4 weeks and I left.
Do you ever see yourself going back out west?
That's a tough question. I don't see myself living out west. I'm actually very afraid of the West. When it comes to my spirituality, I'm very grounded in the Catholicism. I'm not so much ready to explore Western United States mentalities yet.
Okay. And so you came back, and so where did you finish your undergraduate studies?
I finished my undergraduate studies from Florida Atlantic University in 2019. So that was 3 years after I graduated from high school. I used the associate's degree that I got from high school to go to Florida Atlantic University and graduate in a year and a half. So I enrolled in Florida Atlantic University in January of 2018, and I graduated in August of 2019.
Did you join any student organizations or anything like that at FAU?
No, I just strictly went. I was a commuter student. I drove to school, went to class, and then drove home. I still made friends. I still made lifelong connections, but I just drove to school and drove home.
Okay. And so you said you graduated in 2019?
2019, August of 2019.
Okay, so you graduate August 2019. What was your process for applying to law school?
So law school application came quicker than I expected. I was in my final 2 semesters at Florida Atlantic University, and that's when I realized I needed to take the LSAT. The LSAT never was on my radar at all. I never even considered it. I know in high school, there were some people who were studying for the LSAT already, and I thought they were joking around when they were studying. But the LSAT turned out to be a hurdle that I didn't know I would have to jump over. So I enrolled in a LSAT prep course at Florida Atlantic University, and I basically did the LSAT on a whim. I didn't put in the effort and the skill and the time that I needed to, but I took the exam and I was able to get into Nova Southeastern University with my LSAT score with a scholarship. So 2 weeks after I graduated from Florida Atlantic University, I attended Nova Southeastern University for law school for my first year of law school.
And so LSAT stands for the Law School Admissions Test. Why is it that that test is so important?
Scholarships, it's a gateway test. Basically, the LSAT is probably the most important test when it comes to defining your legal career. If you get a high LSAT score, you're in Harvard, you're in Yale, you're in Stanford, you're in Princeton, and then you have no other worries whatsoever. Getting into those schools is the hardest part, in my opinion. Once you're in those schools, you're set for life. So for me, it became an uphill battle with the LSAT because getting into Nova was great, but I had that uphill battle of applying to other schools to provide me more opportunities. And that's how I ended up at University of Florida. And it's very interesting how I ended up at University of Florida because I never thought I would be a Gator. I never thought I would be a Gator.
So tell me about that process. How did you go from Nova to University of Florida?
So I have to give a special shout out to one of my classmates and dear friends, Lorianne Ridley. Lorianne saw or sees the potential in me, and she really pushes me to succeed. She is a very dear friend to me, and she keeps me stable and grounded, or rather, she kept me stable and grounded in law school. So when it came time to apply to transfer, I applied to transfer to 3 schools. I applied to Stanford, I applied to Vanderbilt, and on a whim, I applied to University of Florida. I never really saw myself at UF. I had a big ego as a high school student. I saw my peers get into UF, so I didn't want to go. I wanted to be quote unquote better. And that humbling experience from Stanford kind of humbled me a lot, where I realized that there's no such thing as better. Everybody runs their own race, and the finish line is non-existent. So Lorianne convinced me that there was better opportunities out there. So I applied to UF, and then that's when I did the mock trial. I mean, the moot court competition tryout, and that's where I met you, Ebony, and that's how I got on the team, the moot court team at UF.
Okay, so for people who are listening, there are co-curriculars in law school. And so the big categories of the co-curriculars are journals, moot court, mock trial, and alternative dispute resolution. The journals are basically publications that law students run and edit. And so lawyers, judges, professionals, and even students submit documents to the journals to be published as part of a volume. And the people who select the publications and edit the publications are law students. And then moot court is an appellate style fake argument system. Mock trial is the trial part, and it's like fake competitions. And then alternative dispute resolution are like negotiations. I cannot even think of any other ones. It's negotiations. Do you know any of the others?
I can't think of any right now.
So alternative mediation, that's one, mediation negotiations, and then there's a third category that I truly, genuinely do not know. But what they do is they provide law students with skills that they can use in practice that they might not learn during their actual school classes. And so when you are applying for transfer, before we get to your transfer process, do you mind expanding on what your experience was like at Nova?
Yes. So at Nova, my first few weeks there they were so intense. There's this professor, Professor Brown. Uh, he was the most intense professor I've ever had in my life. If you didn't go into his classroom with your case brief, you were going to get ripped and torn into shreds. And I thrived in that environment. I was always prepared for his class, always ready to go to his class. And I kept on my toes every single day I was in his class. When it comes to extracurricular activities at Nova, I was part of the Student Bar Association. I was a 1L representative. I competed in the closing argument competition that the school had, and I got second place in that competition. I competed in their moot court competition, and I won that competition before applying to UF. So during my first year at Nova as well, that's when COVID hit. So my second semester at Nova, around March or February or March, everything went remote. And that's when law school truly got difficult. Because before, when it was in person, I had no issues. I was ranked second in my class. I was doing so well. Everything was doable. I don't want to say easy, but it was doable. But once COVID hit, the whole game changed completely for me. I don't even know how I made it through law school with all the successes that I did.
So a couple of questions. When COVID hit, did Nova still grade you during that spring semester?
Yes, we still got grades.
Okay. So for anyone listening and trying to do research, there was a massive debate throughout all law schools throughout the country as to whether it should be a pass fail or whether you should get grades. And so a vast majority of schools did pass fail. And then there are schools like Nova that did not. Do you know why they chose to grade y'all?
I don't know. I can say I was a party in those discussions because I was in on the Student Bar Association. But I can say as well, with COVID, I dissociated a lot from the school. So I wasn't as active in those conversations as I would have liked to be.
Yeah, and I think that like from my perspective, I also was not part of those conversations. I was just looking to see what the end result would be. I actually did want that semester to be graded for personal and selfish reasons. But and I was taking a lot of classes, but I do know that part of the push was that there was just so much stress that they didn't want the students to have to worry about grades on top of everything that was happening in the world. And
Yeah.
again, for anyone listening, it's like grades are your make or break in law school because that's how you get hired for your jobs post law school.
So they have this weird grading system where uh, anything above a B minus is graded, but if you get a C plus, it's ungraded. It's pass fail. So a B minus is factored in your GPA, but a C plus is pass fail. I don't know what that means or how that translated, but I didn't have to worry about that C plus. It was a very weird system that they concocted.
Well, so yeah, so you have COVID during your spring semester and then you get into the summer. And I was here for part of your summer experience. What was it like trying out for the moot court team?
So trying out for the moot court team was probably the funnest part of my summer because I did two competitions that summer. I did the Nova competition, where I was trained by Samantha Reynolds. I'll give a shout out to my coach for there. She really taught me moot court and taught me how to argue for that. And then following that, I used the skills that I learned in the NOVA competition to prepare for the UF tryouts. And then with the UF tryouts, I did well. And that's how I ended up on the moot court Final Four and got the opportunity to argue before the Florida Supreme Court.
And so you make the team, you transfer to UF. Because this was COVID in Florida, we did have a hybrid system, but we were heavily encouraged to come back to school. Did you come back to school in person?
No. So it's interesting to say I am a Gator, but I consider myself a baby Gator because I was only in UF one semester. I only spent one semester in person in UF.
Okay, and so you did what semester was that?
That was my 3L fall semester. That was the only time I ever was in Gainesville.
Okay, lucky you. Um, so you did your entire second year of law school remotely. How did you navigate kind of building camaraderie with your peers?
Okay, so I have to give a lot of shout outs right now. The first person that really I connected with was a fellow transfer student. His name is Amir Azizi. We were in professional responsibility class and we were in a breakout room. And he basically was like, "Hey, you're Kyle Forges, right? You're on the Final Four." I was like, "How do you know this about me, mysterious man?" And basically, Amir and I, we just started hopping on Zoom calls and practicing moot court for the Final Four competition. And Amir turned out to be a brother. He lives in California. I've met him in person maybe twice or three times, but he is truly a brother to me. Amir uh, was the first true friend that I made at UF. Then with Bolsa, that truly changed my relationships there as well. I met Kenil Harrigan, I met Courtney Shannon, Stefania Rendell, Adri Washington, all of them moral boosters, keeping me safe, keeping me sane. There's something about the Black community at UF, especially Black women, looking out for young Black men, that is important. Like Courtney Shannon, Courtney is like a big sister to me, and I cannot say enough good things about Courtney. Stefania Rendell, I cannot say enough good things about Stefania. She is so caring and so kind and so sweet. I cannot say enough good things about Adri Washington. And I only met Adri in person maybe one time at graduation too. And she still served as a sister to me. And then the big brother of all of them, Kenil Harrigan. Kenil really, really, really kept me sane. Like he really helped me become a grown up Black man. Like he instilled in me what Black masculinity, good Black masculinity looks like.
And so I'm drawing a massive blank. Were they all in your year or were they a year above you?
They're all my year.
Okay. So this was when Chidarius was president.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So that will be the year after me. So I'm just trying to get everything together. So you graduated UF in 2022.
Correct.
Okay. So what was your most impactful class when you were at UF?
My most impactful class. Trial practice with Professor Barry Blocker. Uh, he was my safe haven, mentor, great professor, overall great guy, trial genius. There's not enough I can say about Professor Barry Blocker, and I'm gonna make sure that he hears this interview because he needs to know how good of a professor he is. He looks out for his students. He really looks out for his students. And no matter how I was feeling, I remember I had to do two final trials, but for my second final trial, I had the Chicago Bar Association moot court competition, and that's the one that I won, and I got second best oralist and third place best brief. He let me skip my second final trial to do the Chicago Bar Association moot court competition, which I ultimately won along with Ryan Johnson, and allowed me to still pass the class, even though I didn't do an integral part of the class. So he still serves as a mentor to me. He still sends me job opportunities. He's always looking out for me. And he is such a great resource and such a great mentor for all of the Black students at UF.
What makes him a good mentor?
He cares. He cares about his students, and he's always, his ears are to the ground in the legal community. He listens, and he's open to have conversations with people.
Okay. And so we've talked about your experiences coming up through law school and graduating. And so you work as a public defender for the state of Florida.
Formerly.
Formally. Okay. When you were a public defender, what kind of like why did you choose to go down that route?
It chose me. My third year spring semester, I served as a certified legal intern in the Broward Public Defender's Office. And here's another shout out, Scott Simmons. He is a white attorney, race doesn't matter, but he supervised me and had my first trial with me. Scott Simmons showed me what it meant to be a public defender, to fight for your clients, to not give up, to be aggressive yet respectful in court. And with Scott Simmons, I learned what being a public defender was and what being a public defender wasn't. And it broke a lot of the stigma that I had in my mind of what being a public defender was, because I realized that public defenders are probably the best attorneys in the legal field. And I can say that with my whole heart. The most talented legal professionals I have ever met are in the Miami-Dade Public Defender's Office, and I met them as well in the Broward Public Defender's Office, the most talented legal minds.
And what makes public defense work? Like, why is it so important?
We're defending the Constitution. People have constitutional rights to attorneys, and police actions are too much. They need to be checked, and there needs to be checks and balances. As a public defender, we are defending the Constitution through defending our clients' rights to proper trials, to proper searches and seizures, to proper protocol of running through the court system, because the court system has no face. We are the face that our clients see when they interact with the court system, and we are their voice when they're speaking in the court system. So as a public defender, we are the most important person for the community to represent the community in the courtroom. Now, the prosecutors represent the government. The prosecutors represent the state of Florida, and the judge is the neutral arbiter of law rather. The judge is the neutral arbiter of law. So we have the law, we have the government, and we have the community. And as the public defender, we represent the community. And that is such an important role that we play in the courtroom.
What is the most important skill to have as a public defender?
Confidence. You have to be willing to argue. If your client is correct, no, rather, let me correct that statement. When your client says something, you need to be ready to say that to the court. When your client knows something, you need to be ready to share that information with the court, whether it's an objection, whether it's a statement during closing argument, during trial, during a cross-examination, you have to have the confidence to put your ego aside and speak on behalf of your client. Your client's voice is the most important voice in the courtroom. The community's voice is the most important voice in the courtroom, not the judge, not the prosecutor, not my voice, but the client's voice. And as a public defender, we serve as the voice of our clients.
If there is a middle schooler or a high schooler who's listening to this interview and they've never heard of what lawyers do and you're the first voice that they hear, what advice would you give to those students who might be considering a career in law?
Read books, learn the magic of words. When they say spelling lessons, think of it as magic. You're spelling words, yes. You're reading books, yes. But words have power. Every single letter that leaves your mouth means something. Every single word that comes out of your mouth means something. And I'll go to the Bible. I'll give a biblical reference. The word was God. Those are the first few words in the Bible. God said, "Let there be light." God said, "Let there be light." He said it. So your speaking voice is the most powerful weapon you have. The tongue is mightier than the pen, which is mightier than the sword. So your written word is more impactful than your physical word, and your voice is the most impactful thing that you have as a human being. I'll tell you a quote that I heard from my Stanford professor. He said, these are what he left me with on the first day of class. He said his body was billions of years old, and I heard that and I was very confused. But he said the reason for that is because the atoms and the molecules that are in circulation in the universe have been there for billions of years. He then said that his voice was an instrument for the soul, basically meaning that the voice is the ability to speak on behalf of what's happening in the soul. So that's what that professor said to me when he made those statements on the first day of class.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you would like to share?
Yes. So currently, I'm on a mission to spread love around the world, and that mission is embodied in a movement I call Roses, Cats, and Garnets. The rose is an embodiment of the mind being a beautiful organic being with roots tethered in our ancestry, in the earth around us, with its stems protruding, giving life to leaves, its thorns protecting itself, and the crown of the rose, the most beautiful part of it. So the rose is the mind, part of the Roses, Cats, and Garnets movement that I'm leading. The cat is the spiritual side of everything, the 9 lives, the ability to bounce back from any obstacle that you face, the ability to keep fighting despite whatever happens to you. That's the cat of the Roses, Cats, and Garnets. And the garnet is the stone, the deep red stone that is a representation of the blood of Jesus, the blood of love. The Roses, Cats, and Garnets movement is a movement of love that I'm pushing forward in this world to help change the world for the better, because I see peace when I go to sleep at night, and I want to see peace as well.
Thank you so much for your time. I had a wonderful time talking with you, and I just can't wait to share your story with the world.
Thank you so much, Ebony.